A letter from John Keats to George and Georgiana Keats, dated Wednesday evening, April 28th, 1819. I have been reading lately two very different books, Robertson's America and Voltaire's Cycle de Louis XIV. It is like walking arm in arm between Pizarro and the great little monarch. In how lamentable a case do we see the great body of the people in both instances. In the first, where men might seem to inherit quiet of mind from unsophisticated senses, from uncontamination of civilization, and especially from their being, as it were, estranged from the mutual helps of society and its mutual injuries, and thereby more immediately under the protection of Providence. Even there they had mortal pains to bear as bad, or even worse, than bailiffs, debts, and poverties of civilized life. The whole appears to resolve into this, that man is originally a poor forked creature, subject to the same mischances as the beasts of the forest, destined to hardships and disquietude of some kind or other. If he improves by degrees his bodily accommodations and comforts, at each stage, at each ascent, there are waiting for him a fresh set of annoyances. He is mortal, and there is still a heaven with its stars above his head. The most interesting question that can come before us is, how far, by the persevering endeavors of a seldom appearing Socrates, mankind may be made happy? I can imagine such happiness carried to an extreme, but what must it end in? Death? Death. And who could in such a case bear with death? The whole troubles of life, which are now frittered away in a series of years, would then be accumulated for the last days of a being who, instead of hailing its approach, would leave this world as Eve left paradise. But in truth, I do not at all believe in this sort of perfectibility. The nature of the world will not admit of it. The inhabitants of the world will correspond to itself. Let the fish philosophize the ice away from the rivers in winter-time, and they shall be at continual play in the tepid delight of summer. Look at the poles and at the sands of Africa, whirlpools and volcanoes. Let men exterminate them, and I will say that they may arrive at earthly happiness. The point at which man may arrive is as far as the parallel state in inanimate nature, and no further. For instance, suppose a rose to have sensation. It blooms on a beautiful morning. It enjoys itself, but then comes a cold wind, a hot sun. It cannot escape it. It cannot destroy its annoyances. They are as native to the world as to itself. No more can man be happy in spite. The worldly elements will prey upon his nature. The common cognomen of this world among the misguided and superstitious is a vale of tears, from which we are to be redeemed by a certain arbitrary interposition of God and taken to heaven. What a little circumscribed, straitened notion! Call the world, if you please, the vale of soul-making. Then you will find out the use of the world. I'm speaking now in the highest terms for human nature, admitting it to be immortal, which I will here take for granted for the purpose of showing a thought which has struck me concerning it. I say soul-making, soul as distinguished from an intelligence. There may be intelligences or sparks of the divinity in millions, but they are not souls till they acquire identities, till each one is personally itself. Intelligences are atoms of perception. They know and they see, and they are pure. In short, they are God. How then are souls to be made? How then are these sparks which are God to have identity given to them, so as ever to possess a bliss peculiar to each one's individual existence? How but by the medium of a world like this? This point I sincerely wish to consider, because I think it a grander system of salvation than the Christian religion. Or rather, it is a system of spirit creation. This is effected by three grand materials acting the one upon the other for a series of years. These three materials are the intelligence, the human heart, as distinguished from intelligence or mind, and the world of elemental space suited for the proper action of mind and heart on each other for the purpose of forming the soul, or intelligence, destined to possess the sense of identity. I can scarcely express what I but dimly perceive, and yet I think I perceive it. That you may judge the more clearly, I will put it in the most homely form possible. I will call the world a school instituted for the purpose of teaching little children to read. I will call the human heart the horn book used in that school. And I will call the child able to read, the soul made from that school and its horn book. Do you not see how necessary a world of pains and trouble is to school an intelligence and make it a soul? A place where the heart must feel and suffer in 1,000 diverse ways. Not merely is the heart a horn book, it is the mind's Bible. It is the mind's experience. It is the text from which the mind or intelligence sucks its identity. As various as the lives of men are, so various become their souls, and thus does God make individual beings. Souls, identical souls of the sparks of his own essence. This appears to me a faint sketch of a system of salvation which does not offend our reason and humanity. I'm convinced that many difficulties which Christians labor under would vanish before it. There's one which even now strikes me, the salvation of children. In them the spark or intelligence returns to God without any identity, it having had no time to learn of and be altered by the heart, or seat of the human passions. It is pretty generally suspected that the Christian scheme has been copied from the ancient Persian and Greek philosophers. Why may they not have made this simple thing even more simple for common apprehension by introducing mediators and personages in the same manner as in the heathen mythology abstractions are personified? Seriously, I think it probable that this system of soul-making may have been the parent of all the more palpable and personal schemes of redemption among the Zoroastrians, the Christians, and the Hindus. For as one part of the human species must have their carved Jupiter, so another part must have the palpable and named mediator and savior, their Christ, their Aramanes, and their Vishnu. If what I have said should not be plain enough, as I fear it may not be, I will put you in the place where I began in this series of thoughts. I began by seeing how man was formed by circumstances, and what are circumstances but touchstones of his heart, and what are touchstones but provings of his heart, but fortifiers or alterers of his nature, and what is his altered nature but his soul, and what was his soul before it came into the world, and had these provings and alterations and perfectionings, an intelligence without identity. And how is this identity to be made? Through the medium of the heart. And how is the heart to become this medium, but in a world of circumstances? There now, I think, what with poetry and theology, you may thank your stars that my pen is not very long-winded. Yesterday I received 2 letters from your mother and Henry, which I shall send by young Burbick with this.